Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. As you all can tell from the title of my video, today we're going to talk about Royal Tobacco by Amouage. Now, previously on my channel, I think about 2 videos ago, I did a review of Tobacco Nomad by Ubigum, which, by the way, that one is a phenomenal tobacco scent. And I went ahead and I put a post on YouTube, and I asked you guys, I'm like, what's your favorite tobacco scent? And a lot of you guys posted so many different tobacco fragrances that I never even heard of, which is a good thing. So I went ahead and got a lot of samples of tobacco fragrances. But the one that stood out the most, that got mentioned a lot in the comment section, was Royal Tobacco by Amouage. So I thought about it. I'm like, you know what? I remember I got a sample of it from a friend of mine about a year ago. So, but I remember I sprayed it on and I really didn't think anything of it. I was like, it's okay tobacco. I mean, it's not very tobacco heavy oriented. It was okay. And I put it to the side. So I was like, you know what? Maybe I missed out on something. So I went ahead and I sprayed it again. And I ended up loving it. The dry down was really good. So I was like, you know what? I definitely have to get this. So I went ahead and purchased it. And since Royal Tobacco has already been reviewed extensively, I won't make an in-depth explanation video today, which I probably end up doing that. But instead, I'll share with you my thoughts on Royal Tobacco and why I ended up adding it to my collection. All right, so this is the box, and I wanted to mention, do not take these colors and paintings lightly. They actually do have a meaning. What I realized that they kind of represent the chords of the fragrance, the way they smell, and the way you would imagine them, how the color of them would represent. They're perfectly actually displayed here in this painting right on the box. So I do love the box and the design on the box because it definitely displays the chords of the fragrance as a color, which is very beautiful. And then the sleeve comes off just like that. And then you have the actual box, which is very high quality, has all this like detailed stuff on it, which I really like. And here is the bottle. Now, what really drew me to Royal Tobacco and made it stand out as a unique tobacco fragrance was its structure. It had a well-balanced composition that felt like a new approach to tobacco scents, unlike anything I'd encountered before in the world of tobacco fragrances. When I learned Amouage was creating their tobacco fragrance, I immediately expected them to incorporate their signature high-quality frankincense. Amouage is renowned for its exceptional frankincense and its dedication to ethical and sustainable sourcing. The House of Amouage has made a long-term commitment to sustainable and ethical harvesting of its locally sourced ingredients and to create employment within the local community to support this mission. So one of the most important things that I wanted to talk about regarding Royal Tobacco is the usage of 2 kinds of incense or frankincense in Royal Tobacco. Again, once I found out that they're creating a tobacco fragrance, right away I knew that they're going to use some kind of a frankincense, Omani frankincense. Now, in here, they used 2 different kinds. They used Omani frankincense oil, which is very highly concentrated, and also they used frankincense resinoid. Omani frankincense oil has a rich and complex aroma. It is characterized by resinous, woody, balsamic, and slightly fruity notes. The scent is often described as having a sweet, warm, and spicy quality. And that's why initially when you spray this, it's actually very spicy. Omani frankincense is highly regarded in perfumery for its depth and sophistication, adding a luxurious and exotic element to fragrances. It is highly concentrated and typically used in very small amounts in fragrances. Omani fragrance oil provides a more intense and pure representation of the scent profile of frankincense. It is commonly used as a top or heart note in perfumes to impart the characteristic frankincense aroma. Now, as I mentioned earlier, in royal tobacco, there are two kinds of frankincense used. One is Omani frankincense oil, and the other one is frankincense resinoid. Now, in perfumery, the primary difference between Omani frankincense oil and frankincense resinoid lies in the form and concentration. Omani frankincense oil is an essential oil obtained through steam distillation or CO2 extraction, which I don't know which method they used here, which it comes from the resin from the Boswellia sacra tree found in Oman and other regions. Frankincense resinoid is a concentrated extract made by solvent extraction of the resin, which is then often diluted in a carrier oil or alcohol to create a usable form for perfumery. Now, I don't know how they diluted it or which form of dilution they used in royal tobacco. I don't know if it's in a carrier oil or in alcohol, but it is less concentrated than the pure essential oil and may contain some of the carrier material. Now, frankincense resinoid can be used in slightly larger quantities in fragrance compositions, and it's usually found in the base notes. Yeah, you see, I think that was the reason why initially I put it to the side about a year ago when I got a sample of it, because when you smell it right away, it doesn't smell like tobacco. It's very spicy. It has this resinous, spicy, lemony, citrus-like opening, which is definitely your incense oil, Omani incense oil. Right away, this sweetness comes in that's also has this Middle Eastern spicy kind of delicacy vibe to it. So it kind of reminds me going into a Middle Eastern household and opening up their pantry and smelling all the spices in there. It kind of has that kind of opening, which is very unique. So it does open up a very rich, resinous, spicy, and very balsamic. It is a very balsamic kind of a scent. And it has this soothing vibe to it, which definitely comes from the Omani frankincense oil. And also has, again, this lemony, citrus-like top notes and a woody undertone, which adds to freshness to this warm and resinous opening. It has a sharp, spicy, or you could say pepper nuances on the opening, which becomes soft spicy after 10 minutes. So initially, when you spray it, if it's very spicy, if you give it time, that spiciness, it calms down because it's from the Omani frankincense oil, and it becomes this very soft, spicy kind of a scent that has this Middle Eastern spices delicacy character to it, which can come off somewhat gourmandish. So to be quite frank with you, royal tobacco epitomizes the Amouage signature incense DNA, skillfully blending it with rich amber, balsamic resins, and delicate mix of Middle Eastern spices. So instead of being very strong on the tobacco scent or tobacco absolute, the amber chord is the focal point here in royal tobacco. And as I mentioned in my tobacco nomad video, where you have saffron as your center stage, as the star of the show, as the sun, and then you have the blonde tobacco as earth going around the sun. You have the same kind of a thing going on here as well, but more multifaceted. So you got the amber chord as the sun, and then you got the Omani frankincense, and you got tobacco absolute as two different planets going around the amber chord as being the sun as the center stage. Now, the frankincense oil is very interesting because it has its own life cycle. It has its top note, middle note, and base note. So it starts off with certain notes on the top, has specific characteristics, and then it turns into something else in the middle notes, and then it ends up with a different kind of a scent profile in the base note. So that alone, just as you can see, makes royal tobacco a very complex kind of a scent. So as far as the notes goes, what do we have here? We got, as I mentioned, we got that Omani frankincense oil, we got elmi, we got cardamom, very beautiful, very seductive, spicy cardamom. We got anise, which we'll get to that. And then we got basil, we got bergamot, and in the heart, we got tobacco absolute, we got licorice. Now, I will talk about it, that the licorice note comes alive within 5 minutes of the opening. The licorice note is very big in this one. And you can definitely cherry pick it actually. Initially when I sprayed this, my mom, without me even saying this is a tobacco scent, when I sprayed it, my mom was like, oh my God, here it smells like licorice. And I'm like, how do you know? She's like, well, I have this spice. And she brought it out and I smelled it and I compared it. I'm like, God, it smells exactly like this. So the licorice note is definitely very strong and powerful in Royal Tobacco. And it's funny because it's definitely backed up and also accentuated by anise. Because if you look up anise, its characteristics, it actually is explained as having licorice characteristics to it. So she used anise in the top note, and then in the heart, you got licorice note. So it creates this great transition from the top to the heart note, and this licorice note keeps getting stronger and stronger as the fragrance opens up more. Now, besides the licorice note, you also have lavender here, and then you got some very interesting notes in here. You got prunol, and then you got fenugreek, you got clove, you got orange blossom, and you got ozymanthus. And prunol and ozymanthus, they play really also a big role in this scent. They create this, some like to say they create this dried fruity kind of a nuances in this scent. Some like to say creates this apricot kind of a smell. And all of it is true because we'll get to it, what prunol is and what ozymanthus is as well, and how they interact with each other. Now, in the base, we got frankincense resinoid, which we talked about it. I'm not going to go over it. And then we got Peru balsam, which makes this fragrance very balsamic. So remember, Royal Tobacco, it's very strong on amber cord and it's very, very balsamic. Now, the amber cord, of course, comes from that beautiful sweet benzoin, labdanum, myrrh, and vanilla from Madagascar. Now, then you got tonka bean absolute, which has to be 90% coumarin, which adds to the tobacco absolute. And then you got birch tar, which adds to the smokiness of the scent. And then you got vetiver. Now, I believe that the vetiver in here must be Havanese vetiver because of the smoky dry down to add to the birch of this fragrance and make it more smoky and more resinous. And then you got guaiac wood, which makes the fragrance woody, but gives it a sweet kind of a characteristic to it as well. And guaiac wood actually complements the Assam oud really well because Assam oud has that rich, woody, somewhat sweet, resinous texture to it, which goes really well with guaiac wood. And then at the end, you got a bunch of musks in here, which adds to the longevity of Royal Tobacco. All right, so regarding the elmi resin that I was talking about in perfumery, it has a fresh, lemony, and slightly spicy scent with resinous and balsamic undertones. It is often used to add a bright and uplifting note to fragrance, and it can contribute to a sense of freshness and clarity, which here is used to do that with frankincense oil, and it kind of lifts that frankincense oil up in the opening. You know, it's really important to know that you have to like licorice note to enjoy this scent because the licorice note is very strong, as I mentioned earlier. Besides the fact that it has the Omani frankincense oil, as it gets to the heart, the tobacco absolute definitely is amped up with the licorice note. And that transition as I mentioned, is done very smoothly from the top note to the heart of the scent, and that's done with anise. Now, in perfumery, anise has a distinct and sweet licorice-like aroma, as I mentioned earlier. It can be warm, spicy, and slightly herbal. So that's why I said this fragrance, Royal Tobacco, has this Middle Eastern spicy pantry kind of a spices kind of a smell to it. Now, something interesting that happens in the middle or the heart of Royal Tobacco is besides the fact that you're greeted with tobacco absolute and licorice note, there's something syrupy in here as well. And that's, of course, coming from fenugreek. Now, fenugreek in perfumery has a unique aroma that is sweet, slightly spicy, and somewhat reminiscent of maple syrup. It can have a warm and comforting scent with a touch of herbal complexity to it. Now, as you can see, when I'm talking about all these notes separately, they all have some spiciness and some sweetness to them. And that's why I keep talking about this Middle Eastern spicy delicacy kind of a vibe that you get from this fragrance on the opening, which almost has this gourmandish kind of an aura to it. And that's because all these spices, they have this sweetness to them, like fenugreek, like anise, like licorice note, even tobacco absolute, and then you got tonka bean absolute, which is 90% coumarin, and then you got that vanilla from Madagascar, which is also sweet. So all this sweetness can add to the gourmandness of the scent, but some might not agree and say no, and that's also true because of the hardcore notes, the dark notes that are used in the base, such as birch tar, assam oud, and the woody notes that are used in the base, and also the actual incense oil as well, because incense oil, as it gets to the dry down, it kind of becomes more resinous, woody, and also smoky at the same time. And that can counterpoint that gourmandish aura that I was talking about, that you get that in the opening and in the heart of Royal Tobacco. Now, the last interesting thing that I wanted to talk about was prunol and osmanthus. You see, prunol is a synthetic aroma chemical used in perfumery. It is designed to mimic the scent of plums or prunes. In perfumery, prunol can contribute sweet, fruity, and somewhat jammy notes with a hint of richness. And that's why I mentioned to you guys that the notes are selected very carefully, because even prunol has this jammy kind of a vibe to it, which fenugreek has this maple syrup kind of vibe to it, and then you got the licorice note. So you can see how all these notes, they complement each other so well. And then now let's talk about the fruity part, because a lot of people in the reviews, they talk about how it has this apricot kind of a smell, which prunol has this prune or plum kind of a fruity vibe to it. Some talk about dried fruits kind of a smell about Royal Tobacco, and that has to do with prunol acting up with osmanthus. Now, osmanthus has apricot-like, fruity, sweet, and juicy quality with hints of tea-like note. Also has floral nuances, but interesting, it has a leathery undertone as well. Now, bear with me, because osmanthus has a life cycle to it as well, so it can definitely work well with prunol and create that plum-like, prune-like, or apricot or dried fruit-like kind of a smell to Royal Tobacco. But then, besides adding sweetness and fruity notes, it can also add some leathery nuances to the scent. And I think osmanthus in the heart creates a very smooth transition of that leathery note to come in slowly at the end of the heart note as you get to the base of this fragrance, because of the birch and also because of assam oud. Again, as I mentioned, Royal Tobacco, it's a very complex kind of a fragrance. Yeah, it has a lot of notes to it. And again, you guys should do this. Every time I spray this fragrance, when I smell from here and then I go back and smell from the bottle, I can smell all the top notes. And it's very beautiful, and that's how you can tell it definitely morphs, and it has a multifaceted life cycle to it. And it is a long-lasting fragrance as far as the performance goes, if you guys want to know. But initially, when I got this fragrance, like I said, because it wasn't a tobacco-dominated kind of a fragrance, I didn't think that much of it. But because of you guys mentioned in the comment section of my post, I was like, okay, I have the, sample of it, let's try it. And I sprayed it and I was like, God, this is actually really good. And it is a good scent, you just have to give it time. If somebody didn't like it initially, you have to give it time to grow on you and you'll end up loving it because it's very beautiful. And there's some people that they loved it right away. Initially, when they sprayed it, they fell in love with it. For me, it took me a while to kind of ending loving it. So it is a very beautiful fragrance, very complex, very classy, very sophisticated. But remember, it's mainly an amber balsamic kind of a scent. So it has a huge amber body to it. It's very balsamic. And the tobacco absolute note and the frankincense, they're there, but they're not the major players. The major star of the show is the amber chord. So that's it, you guys. That's all I have for Royal Tobacco by Amouage. I hope this was enough information for you guys. I would definitely suggest you guys to get a sample of this. It's a very unique kind of a tobacco. And also one important thing that I wanted to talk about was what Amouage was trying to achieve with Royal Tobacco. This was really important. So this is supposed to smell like the life cycle of someone opening the box of a very high quality cigar box, like Havana cigar box that's been kept in a humidor. And when you smell the cigar before you, light it up, the smell of the leaves that are kind of humid and spicy and sweet, that's the opening of Royal Tobacco. And then as you light the cigar and you start smoking it, that tobacco absolute smell comes alive with its sweetness and its kind of fruity aroma. That's what you get in here as well as you get to the heart of it. And as you start smoking the cigar for about 5 minutes or so, or 10 minutes, that smokiness of it comes alive and it creates this very resinous, smoky, somewhat leathery kind of nuances, which still has that sweetness of tobacco in it as well that you can smell when somebody smokes the cigar. And that's exactly what you get with Royal Tobacco as you get to the dry down of it. So that was also something that Amouage was trying to achieve with Royal Tobacco. And I think when you think about it that way, it actually does have that. So it's not a pipe kind of a scent. It's not supposed to smell like a pipe, but more like a cigar box, a very high quality cigar box that's been kept in a humidor. And when you initially open that box and the way those cigars freshly smell like, that's exactly what you get with Royal Tobacco on the opening. And then the rest, as it goes to the dry down, it goes through the life cycle of Royal Tobacco. And that's it, you guys. That's all I have. Thank you so much. And hopefully I'll see you guys soon with another video. Bye.